Welcome back to Let It Rip. So is it about security or religious discrimination, as some have claimed? Joining us is America's angriest mayor, Verge Bonaro of Lansing, self-described angriest mayor. Next to him, the always feisty Thayrone X, who you can hear every day on the weekdays, WAAM, Wham Radio in Ann Arbor. And then there's Dawood Waleed, Executive Director for the Council on American Islamic Relations of Michigan. Thank you for returning. We also have a first-timer. Meet Iman Jajoni Damon. She was born in Baghdad, Iraq, and now practices immigration law here in Metro Detroit. And everyone loves Charlie, so let's get started. Ladies first, Attorney Iman Jajoni Damon, you represent Iraqi immigrants as part of your position. Your reaction, illegal, legal? Is it necessary, the restrictions?
It is perfectly legal and it is necessary. However, the implementation is problematic for me. And I don't just represent Iraqis. I represent the majority of my practice is people from the Middle East, from all religions, Muslims, Christians, and Jews alike. However, this new executive order that we are calling new is really not a novel idea. It is merely an extension of what President Obama did back in 2011. As a matter of fact, in 2011, President Obama, to protect our nation, listed those 7 countries, and if I may list them, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Somalia, Libya, and Yemen. Thank you. And I think I forgot one more country. But the 7 countries were listed in President Obama's executive order in 2011, and it was necessary and legal and within his constitutional authority under the Immigration Nationality Act, Section 212F, to protect our nation. So what President Trump did last week, to me, is just an extension to protect our nation. I don't see it as a discriminatory law against Muslims, not at all. I see it as protection against jihadists, against terrorists, and I've actually done my own polling in my practice. I have a lot of Muslim clients, and I've asked them, and I said, how do you feel about what President Trump did? Because I have issues with the implementation. Their answer is that, you know what, we came to this country to be protected. We ran away from there because we were targeted, because we were slaughtered and persecuted. And we jumped through thousands of hoops to enter the United States. Yes, we don't want them in here. We want everybody to be vetted so we can be protected in this land, in this nation.
You connect with everybody in Dearborn, Michigan, around the world. You're hearing?
Well, I'm hearing the exact opposite of what she's saying, and I'm actually one of the plaintiffs on the lawsuit that my organization, CARE, filed against the Trump administration on Monday, because we believe, we have a different opinion, but that, number one, we have something called the Establishment Clause, in which our government should not be making decisions about anything relating to the government showing favoritism or exclusion for one religion over another. So for instance, in the campaign trail, basically Donald Trump is making good of what he said, that he wanted to have a Muslim ban. Okay, when Paul Ryan, when he had more courage, said you can't do that, then he said, I'm going to go and select certain countries, right? Certain countries, by the way, there hasn't been a single Iraqi or Syrian refugee Muslim that's committed an attack on the homeland. But then what he did is, in the fine print or in the clause exception, is for religious minorities. So in fact, he is giving special deference for Christian refugees over Muslims, and this is really, it is a Muslim ban, the way we see it. And, you know, and Syrian refugees, it's not just a small period of time or a certain amount of days. He said this is indefinite. It's indefinite.
Verge Bonaro, you're the mayor in Lansing. You welcome refugees. There's a legislation in Colorado that suggests that the mayor and the city council could be responsible if a refugee commits a violent crime. Would you be held accountable? Should you be held accountable?
Well, Dawood stated it very well. I mean, I'm accountable for the safety of my community, and I take that very seriously. Public safety is job one. And, you know, we practice community policing. It's very important. I'm sure you're familiar with it. The idea is to build relationships, to build communications, and to build credibility with the police department so that when there's a problem, when there's an issue, people will come to us so we can get information. I think that what President Trump is, the fear-mongering that he's doing, that it is not helpful. I think it is not not making us safer. Of course, we all believe in vetting. There should be that. But like the permanent ban on Syrian refugees, there's no cause for it. And, you know, this is why 1,000 people in the State Department, 1,000 experts and career State Department people said they were against this. It wasn't properly vetted. So I appreciate what Iman is saying, but I don't think it's grounded in fact. That's why these folks that have been there for so long working on it are against it. And in terms of what's happening in Lansing, our people are afraid. Mexican Americans, Muslim Americans are being discriminated against. They're being targeted. It's a new type of McCarthyism, and it is not grounded in fact. These refugees have not committed terrorist acts in this country. Well, in fact, there's more domestic terrorism by Christians than there are in terms of Muslim attacks.
They wrote talking about security's website. FBI Director James Comey said in front of Congress, testified that he has trouble. It's a challenge to vet refugees, that we don't have background, we don't have paperwork. You respond.
First of all, nobody has a right to be here other than American citizens. So when I saw Chuck Schumer crying about this, I'd like to see him cry about American citizens at least once. Now, anybody that wants to come here and come here legally and come here and go through a vetting process and make sure that you're not some type of an abject criminal, we welcome you in. But let's go back. From 1920, I think it was 21 or 27, up until 1956, nobody got in. That's because we wanted to have a period of assimilation where people who came here from all nations were going to become Americans, as opposed to come here, not learn to speak the language, sequester off in little communities. So I'm all for this. I want to make it even stricter, because I want to make sure, as Donald Trump put in that executive order, that you have never been involved in any familiar honor killings, any violence against women, which is rife throughout Muslim countries.
Well, then he shouldn't be in the White House.
Why? Did he ever do an honor killing? This is propaganda.
Violence against women.
Here's the issue, though.
There's two issues here.
Cut
the lie. Cut the propaganda.
All right, but listen, there's the law. Some people are saying, like Dawood's lawsuit says essentially that the president does not have the authority to have this 7-country ban. I've looked at it. I'd say the president does have the authority to ban people. He does. So the law is there. So I don't know your lawsuit. I don't know where it's going to go. The other thing is politics. Again, we go back to politics. Is this the right type of situation where we want to create the country? We're excluding people. Now, that's a political issue that we can have.
It's divisive.
But here's the issue, though. We're talking about some sanctuary cities. Everybody gets all weirded out about this thing. If someone is pulled over today who, for any reason, he was a speeding ticket, and the police determine that that person is an illegal alien or in this country without paperwork, I want the cops to turn that person over to ICE or the Border Patrol or whatever. That's what we want. And that's really what this whole thing is about. Also, part of the executive order is that the government is going to come up with some rules, proper vetting rules, to make sure that citizens are coming in, or people are coming to this country legitimately, and they are not terrorists.
That's what they said they're doing now. They're assessing the situation.
So what, we didn't have rules before? How come virtually no refugees have committed any acts of terror in this country?
What are you, nuts?
You know, it's actually ironic. It's ironic that now the mainstream media is all of a sudden up in arms. Boston bombers.
Okay. They were about San Bernardino. Those were Russians, which is Donald Trump's Muslims. How come Russia's not
where were these lawsuits when the ban came out in 2011? President Clinton came out with the ban in 1995, and then he was applauded in Congress for coming out with the ban. Bush came out with the ban. President Obama came out with the ban. Where were the lawsuits back then? How come you didn't say that was discrimination?
President Obama did not block Syrian refugees. In fact,
he did. As a matter of fact, he blocked all Iraqi refugees. In 2011, he blocked all. In 2015, he blocked all Iraqi refugees. Did you file a lawsuit back then? Did you say that was discrimination? I'd like to see, where were you in 2011 and 2015? Why is it today you guys all up in arm and going crazy because we're trying to protect our nation? Where were you?
Actually, when it was implemented, we actually did file a federal complaint.
No, you did not file any lawsuits.
With the Department of Homeland Security, Civil Rights,
attorney for 25 years.
Civil Rights Division, we did.
Thank you, panel. Thank you. You've heard from the panel. They want to do a little more. You heard it so far, but it's your turn when Charlie takes the show on the road.
All right, and here's what you are saying tonight. Harvey says the largest Middle Eastern Muslim city in America is in Michigan. No terrorist attacks. So explain why the ban again. All right, also here, Penny says Trump is trying to keep our country safe and save money. After all, he is a businessman. Also, Tony says Obama banned Cuban refugees just weeks ago. Where was the media and the alternative left outrage? And finally, Patrick, Trump needs to accept himself. Then he will be accepting of others. One more. Mark, the hostility being generated by the political divide and exacerbated by social media will eat you up if you let it. Ron?
Charlie, you made reference there to the president. He said we're going to take this 90 to 120 days to come up with a plan that's more direct. Right now, the 7 countries goes back to President Obama. That was his template. Does anybody have any positive vibes that this could work out?
There's no ban on Muslims. There's no ban
I didn't
on
say
any
it was.
religion. No, I'm just saying that, but that's how
countries.
it's being construed. That's the lie that's being told. This is about 7 countries that harbor terrorism like crazy.
There's, I think it's less than 10% of the world's population of Muslims. Dawood, you were saying that you thought it was a Muslim ban.
When there's an executive order that says that people from a certain country that is vastly majority Muslim, and then there's a religious minority exception, which means Christians, that is a de facto Muslim ban. And to say otherwise is being really disingenuous.
As a matter of fact, what I'd like to add, last year during the Obama administration, last year alone, 2016, there were 13,486 refugees from Syria that were admitted to this country. 99.1% were Muslims. Did you cry out discrimination when he allowed 99.1%?
None of them committed any terrorism. They were vetted.
But you're saying the religious litmus is discriminatory.
I talked about community policing because it works. You build relationships, people trust you, you get information.
We need to unify.
This is bringing people back into clannishness and into their own groups.
No, we need to be united and agree.
Thanks for watching. That's it for Let It Rip.
The Let It Rip discussion continues online. Sound off on Facebook, Twitter, or fox2detroit.com.